Let's go next then to the Western Cape. And Nasipi Same is standing by with the DA's premier candidate, Alan Winde. Nasipi, good morning. Before you launch into that conversation, what does your leaderboard look like where you are?
Crashing earlier this morning, it still remains the same. We are sitting at about close to 70% of the votes that have been tallied, and the DA leading with about over 50% rather, and it does seem that they are poised to once again continue governing in the Western Cape following their 15 years at the helm of governance in the Western Cape. They are followed by the ANC, who have drastically dropped, taking into account the amount of votes that they managed to garner in the previous general elections. They're closely followed by the PA, who is quite new at a national level government, and including parties like the National Coloured Congress, or the Cape Coloured Congress as some would know it, where they have been making an inroad. And these are political parties that didn't really have a presence on a provincial level in the Western Cape, many of them having more of a presence in various municipalities. And they are saying that they are looking to make that inroad, going as far as saying that they are going, or rather trying to chip away from the DA vote. However, by the looks of the numbers at this moment, it does seem to me that they've chipped away from the opposition parties here in the Western Cape. However, I'm going to toss now to the premier candidate in the Western Cape, Alan Winde. Thank you so much for your time. But we are looking at the numbers. You guys are sitting firmly above 50%. Were you anticipating these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we set ourselves a target. We didn't want to go back from the last election. We were at 55% last time around. We're sitting at 54. We probably could go up to 55 still. I'm happy with those numbers. Of course, this was much more contested election campaign, a lot more smaller parties contesting in this province, looking to get a slice. But I think, as you were saying earlier, or as part of the introduction, that we're seeing the PA coming in, but it looks like they're taking votes from the EFF. It looks like they're taking votes from the ANC. And that's also quite interesting. You know, they've been involved in local government elections to see what they did in the last local government election in the Karoo in Beaufort West. They did very well, but now what we've done is we've actually passed them now. They've lost ground there. I mean, they won a by-election from us just 2 months ago, and in this election we've taken that ward back in the city as well, and in Knysna specifically, because of course where they did get power in that ANC EFF Patriotic Alliance coalition, they didn't do anything with that power. In actual fact, it got worse.
Looking at the voting districts, are there some that had previously voted for the DA, and now that you guys have lost ground in?
Yeah, I mean, we still got to go and do those analytics, and I mean that will be part of how we look at the next 5 years as campaigning. Is which areas did we lose ground in, why, and that becomes part of how you need to go into not necessarily only the next 5 years, but the next 2 years, because it's 2 years' time we'll have local government elections. So that's obviously one thing. The second thing is, we've spent months crisscrossing this province. It's the best thing to do is to utilize what you've heard, what you've seen, your interactions with citizens, because it's more intense than any other time in your period of government. And then how do you actually internalize what you've listened to, what citizens are saying to you, so that you can start tweaking. You've got a manifesto, but you add what the citizens have said to say that sets your direction as government for the next 5 years.
Would you say that perhaps in some of your strongholds, like Mitchell's Plain, for example, that people there were unhappy about perhaps the DA's stance on the Israel and Palestine conflict? And how do you look at going back to those voters and gaining that confidence again?
Okay, so definitely we'll go back, but I haven't seen that has been a big influencing factor. And of course, again, Mitchell's Plain, highly contested. But I think, these are still the stations that are still coming in now, being verified. Excuse me. They're the ones that are being verified. And that'll be part of the analysis. But I mean, we're still holding strength there. But also, that was hotly contested by smaller parties.
So we had an issue with the dashboard earlier, systems crashing, but even on voting day there were issues with the devices, people standing in long queues well over 9 o'clock. Looking at the overall picture, I know it's still a bit too early to tell. You are saying that you're going to go back and look at those analytics and data. What do you make out of these elections?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of people were turned away because of the long queues, which is, not good for democracy. But a lot of people stood their ground and they kept in those lines until not even just past closing time, until into the early hours of the next day. I think of specifically in the Parklands area, an area that's had a lot of growth, a lot of people moving into that area. And I mean, those people, I must say to them, thank you for standing in that queue in the interests of democracy. I mean, those are going to be interesting analytics as well, because those are the new regions of the city of Cape Town that are absolutely cosmopolitan. That's kind of the new. That's what we want South Africa to be like. That as we grow and as more and more people are moving here and finding places to live and economies to be part of. And so there's also going to be interesting voting patterns coming out of places like Parklands.
We'll have to leave it there. DA Premier candidate there for the Western Cape, Alan Winde. Just ask my colleague to show you the dashboard once again. About 68.13 votes, we're getting an update now. 69.27 votes have been tallied thus far in the Western Cape. DA still leading, sitting firmly above 50%, followed by the ANC. And we heard from the Premier candidate of the DA that smaller parties fiercely campaigning in the Western Cape. We are seeing those numbers trickling in with some of these smaller parties, or political parties that have had more of a presence on a local government sphere, now entering the sphere of provincial government and making that inroad. Parties like the PA, including the National Coloured Congress, saying there that they are looking to be some sort of not only an alternative but also an opposition party that can hold the government that will be elected in the province to account.